Hello, friends of Golf Course Quality Fertilizer. Well, it's mole season. It just seems like the fall, moles always pick up and everybody starts going, hey, I got a mole in my yard. Well, they're really trying to gather up as much food as they can so they can hibernate through the winter time. And so you do see this increase of mole activity. And that's typically also when grubs are around or able to be fed on. And so it doesn't mean you have grubs when you see moles, but if you do, you'll find out real quick how that mole comes in and it just kind of makes a mess. This situation here, they use grub control, so there isn't grubs here. And I can tell that because most of their tunnels are nice and long and kind of Y-shaped rather than an area that's completely destroyed, right? So if it's going after grubs, you'll notice that they will completely destroy a certain patch or area. But if they're going after earthworms, which is their main food source, right? They eat all kinds of insects. They only eat insects, right? And so they'll come through and they'll feed on the earthworms, and we'll show some other patterns of how I know they're going after some earthworms too over in the landscape area, all right? And so here's how you apply these guys. This is the one we've had on the golf courses for eons, and it's been the best one. I typically get 90% success with the tauperid worms, worm baits, right? And they have tomcats, and there's all kinds of stuff out there at the stores. And I've had about 50% success with those other ones. I kind of attribute it to like the flaccidness of that. So if you notice this worm here, and you got to really keep your hands scent free. And so that's why I have these gloves on. Matter of fact, sometimes I'll rub them in the grass. You'll see that. And as I grab them, because I don't want the mole to smell me on this worm, right? Because they are very sensitive to smell. So this one I think is a little bit more soft, not so rigid like the others. And so I find this long straight tunnel. I find an area in it that I think is going to be a good spot. I'll take my thumb. You can take a screwdriver, but then you're adding scent. So I like to kind of just slowly work my way in. If it's a fresh tunnel, and that's what you should always be putting these in, is fresh tunnels. So you should come out and push everything down and then see where some new stuff got pushed up. And then you enter this fresh tunnel. You'll feel it. I can feel it going this way and that way. I take the worm and I slide it down in there. And he can smell in stereo, so he might already smell me putting this in here if he's near. And make sure I kind of push it to the side a little bit. The most important part too is to make sure you close that hole up really good. And matter of fact, I push the whole line down, even though he'd be like, what's going on? You know, I push it all the way down. So that way I can tell, and I flag where I set that thing. And that way I can tell if he's come back through here again, and he at least came in contact or knew where that worm was. And so then I make sure I push this whole thing down to see. And another neat thing you'll see is some of it, when you're seeing the longer, straighter tunnels that they use more frequently, you'll notice that the grass is a little messed up in there. That's because they've done it several times. And so the turf has even suffered because he's come through here a few times. And so it's a real good candidate when you see that. A tunnel that's been used multiple times. All right, let's go ahead and go over here. And I'm going to show you why these are a better advantage than a trap in certain circumstances, right? You always want to apply these after a rain, because after a rain, that's what pulls the worms up to the surface, and then they get actively feeding on that. This is a gummy, so like, you know, you don't want to put this thing in the ground and it rain that night. It'll just melt it, right? And so we want to make sure that we actually get this thing in the ground after a rain and mimic what an earthworm would actually do. And I see a neat little tunnel back here. Let me see. Oh, yep, I can find it. Actually, he's kind of going underneath the block. I'm going to take this and put it right underneath this block, because you know worms hang out under blocks all the time. Hang it right there. Push this down real good. Make sure I can tell if he come back through here again. But along sidewalks, concrete edges, fences, where they run continuously all the time, it seems like, and they use these things as worm traps. Great little spot to put a worm. I think I almost have 100% success whenever I find a spot like that. It seems like I've got them every single time I've found a spot like this. So we're gonna put this here. We're gonna see. And typically it's one mole doing all this damage, because they can do 100 yards of damage in one day. And if they're feeding and getting ready to hibernate, they have to feed voraciously. And so if they run into a friend of theirs or an equal mole, they're gonna fight it out. And one will get ran off or sometimes even killed. I've found moles dead in the yard, and it wasn't from some other animal, it was from another mole, you could tell. And it was like, wow, I mean, they just don't like to hang around each other in the fall especially, not during mating time. So yeah, what's kind of neat about these things here is you can push them back in, it keeps that tray, just keep them above 100 degrees or below 100 degrees, sorry, and that way they don't melt. It says this side up. These are great little things. These and traps, both of those, great way to do it, but that's how you put worms in and find good spots. Thanks for listening.